Hello to all you Baselight Learning Programme students, and thanks to those of you who've sent in comments and suggestions. We always aim to provide the highest quality of training, so your feedback is very useful. Now today I'm going to be covering a small but very powerful tool in Baselight, which is used to modify mats created by keys. Now we're not covering keys today, but we will be looking at the mat tool. So I'll just get my Baselight system up and running and then we'll get started. So I've got a scene here with three shots, and I'm going to use them to demonstrate different examples of when you might use the mat modifier tool. So on this first shot here we've got stained glass windows, and let's say the red glass has faded more than the other colours over the ages. So we need to separate out the red in order to grade it and change its colour. So I've got a hue angle key which I've used to create a key on the red. Now we're not covering keys today, that'll be covered in a separate session. But if we want to look at the mat that the key has generated, we can do that by pressing O on the keyboard. Or if you're working on a blackboard, there's a dedicated layer mat button. And you can see that we're now seeing the mat. If I just toggle that off again by pressing O, you can see that mat is obviously made from the red colours in the image. But if I zoom in a little bit using the control and the mouse, you can see there are areas of the mat here that are maybe not quite solid enough to allow me to grade all of the red colours that I want to grade. For example, there's a few holes in the mat here. Now I could obviously go in and adjust the key to try and get a better mat, but as I said, today's not about keys, so I'm going to show you how we can use the mat tool to modify the mat to improve it if possible. So we add the mat modifier by pressing B on the keyboard. And you'll notice that when I did that, a new strip was added below, in this case the hue angle keyer strip, and also in the parameters view of the bottom of the list of mat operators, the edit mat tool button is now enabled. If I turn that off again, you'll notice that the mat tool strip is now still in the stack. That strip would have been added had I turned on the button here as well. Okay, so what have we got in the mat tool operator? Well, up here you can see we have a list of tabbed pages, and each one of these provides access to a different type of tool. They're all filtering tools and modifier tools to allow us to process the mat. Now blur is enabled as the default tool, so if it's basically just a straight either Gaussian or box blur, and if I increase the radius you'll see it obviously just simply blurs the mat. Now the extended ranges button is on at the moment, so it's obviously blurring it quite a lot. If I turn that off, we've got finer control, and now you can see how that's obviously a way to soften the mat. But in this particular case, it's not really doing what I want. It's just blurring everything out, and I can still see there are gaps here. And if I use another mat overlay mode, and you can cycle through the mat overlay modes using Shift and O on the keyboard, this mode overlays the mat on the image in green in this case, and you can see that the mat's now starting to get a bit diffuse, and it's not really got the edges that we want anymore, especially not up here. So I'll just go back to the original mat mode and we'll back off the blur. Now rather than backing off, I could actually disable it by turning off the button in the tab here. If that button's not white, then you can see even though the controls are still up, it's having no effect on the image. As soon as you adjust the controller, it turns it back on again. So if you don't want it to have an effect, remember to turn off the button there. So let's have a look at the other tools that we've got available. Well, the first one is Erode Dilate, and you'll see if I drag that to the left, it's effectively making all the white areas smaller. They're shrinking or being eroded. And if I move it to the right, so positive values, then that's increasing the size. What it's basically doing is it's taking each pixel and then growing the pixel. So if we do it really, make it very extreme, then we get these square blocks in the mat. So that kind of does what I want. It's filling in the gaps, but again, it's making the mat bigger than I really want. So I'm not going to use the erode dilate, so I'll turn that off. The next mat operator, the next mat tool operator is the in-out blur, and if I adjust that one, you'll see that it's a kind of combination of the erode dilate and the blur tool. So again, in this particular case, that isn't quite what I want, but you can see, especially as you increase the in-out blur, how it does give you, it does spread the mat out and fill in any gaps at the same time. So that's actually quite a useful tool. But I'm going to turn that off for now. So it doesn't look like any of the tools that we've got here will actually fix this particular problem. So let me open up the Customize menu and show you what else we have. Well, we've got the ability to add additional stages, in other words, additional mat operators. These are the 4 which are loaded as standard. In fact, you can see they're numbered, and the numbering on them determines the order in which they're processed. So it'll be processed 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, I'm going to show you the sander filter. So if I add that, and in fact that's added as stage 5, in this case it's the only stage that's enabled, you can see that it's got a few controls here that allow us to either de-speckle the mat or de-hole the mat. Now we regard a speckle as being a white spot in an area of black, and a hole is an area of black in the middle of white. So in this particular case, I want to try and de-hole these areas here. Now we need to tell it roughly how big the hole is going to be, and this only works for small holes. So we need to tell it what pixel area to search over, and I'm going to set it to about 3 pixels. So that'll be looking at a radius of 3 pixels around each pixel in the mat. And as we turn up the de-hole threshold, you'll see that it now fills in, does a pretty good job of filling in those holes. It's also filled in some holes over here. Now, as I said, it's not going to fill in these really large areas, and that may not be a problem because they may not be very red, so they may not be areas that we particularly want to grade anyway. We also have a colour difference threshold here, which will vary the amount of colour difference that's being fed into the detector that's detecting the holes or the speckles. So in this case, that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use the de-hole tool, but I now do actually want to try and smooth it out a little bit. So I'm going to also add the in-out blur, but I want to do that after I've applied the sander. So I need to move the sander to earlier in the processing chain. So if we go back to the Customize menu, you can see that for the currently selected stage, you can move it left by clicking on this button here, and each time I click that, it moves 1 step to the left. So now we've got it before the in-out blur. We can also move stages right as well using this button, and also if you don't need any of them, you can actually delete them completely by clicking on delete current stage. Okay, so let's use the in-out blur now, so I'll enable that, and again I'm going to back that off a little bit. So this is now using in-out blur on the sanded image, so I'm going to push it up a little bit, so the mat is now a bit bigger, and if I overlay the mat again on the image. In fact, I'm going to use a third overlay mode. If I hold Shift and O again, what this overlay mode is actually cutting out the white parts of the mat. It's showing us the image, and the other parts, the black parts of the mat, are replaced with a mid-grey tone. So we can actually see roughly what the effect is going to be, which parts of the image we're going to be affecting with our grade. And you can see it's actually spilled out a little bit now onto the edges. So I'm now going to use a matte curve, which is this stage here, and it's after the in-out blur. So if I enable that, and now if I apply this curve, as it stands at the moment in its default, it's not having any effect at all. It just goes linearly from 0 or from black to white. But if I drag the bottom of the curve along, you'll see it has the effect of, if I go back to the other matte mode here, you can see it has the effect of shrinking in the mat. I'm making the mat smaller at the edges by doing that. We can also adjust the shape of the curve using the handles, or we can enable auto handles mode, and then we can adjust the softness of the curve. So we can use and we can also adjust the white end to to pull in the white areas. In this case though, I really want to choke them back into the black. So let's just see what the final effect is if I turn off the matte. And now if I go to my grade layer and adjust the grade, let's just say we wanted to increase the redness of those areas. So I'll just increase the saturation, just the red areas a bit as well. Okay, so that's an example of showing you how you can use the matte tool on a key to try and improve the matte. Let's go on to the next shot here, which is this is actually a composite layer, and you can see I've used, in this case I'm using a key, this different kind of key, to try and separate out the sky so we can do a sky replacement. Now you'll notice that although I tried to adjust the key, I haven't quite got a perfect solid separation. There is some contamination in the blacks, and the area of cloud in the original shot, I'm not really keying that quite well enough. Now again, we could adjust the key, but the whole point of this tutorial is to talk about the matte tool. So let's enable, so I'll select the key again, and I'm going to enable the matte tool. This time I'll click the button, so you'll see it actually adds a layer here when I do that. And if I first of all just show the matte again by pressing O on the keyboard, the first thing I want to try and do is to try and clean it up a little bit, make it more solid. So we've got another operator that we can add in our operators here, which is the threshold. So I'll add the threshold, and as its name implies, this allows us to set a low and high threshold, which will basically slice the black and white image. And I can also expand it to make sure that black is full black and white is full white if I enable the expand to full range button. So if we drag the top slider up, that's now made the white nice and solid, and if I do the other slider at the top, we've now pretty much made the sky completely black. Okay, now remember this is a composite, this matte's being used for compositing, so it's the opposite way round effectively, so white is the area that we're not affecting in this case, and black is the area that's being used to replace the background, or to insert the sky. So let's just turn off the matte overlay, and we'll just have we'll zoom in now. If I go through, you'll see that we no longer see the cloud in the sky up there. But if I zoom in more, you'll see that it's not too bad, but the edges of the matte here are a bit sort of steppy. So again, I'll go back to the matte so we can see it here, and now you can see more clearly that the matte is quite sort of steppy at the edge. That's partly because I added a threshold, which has really made it much more clear that the matte is it's got some steps along the edge there. So I'm going to add another stage. I could try using, actually let's just first of all move the threshold stage. I'll move that all the way to the left because it's the first thing we want to do on the matte. Okay, and we could try using, say, one of the blur tools, maybe just a straight Gaussian blur, just to try and soften that off. And well, that does smooth it off a bit. Again, it's making the matte grow a little bit too much. So if I were to use the in-out blur, now that doesn't make the matte grow, but unfortunately, you can see that as I drag it too far, we're losing the detail here in the matte. So I can't really use that tool. So instead, we've got another type of filter, which is called the edge filter. And whereas the sander was looking for isolated areas of either white or black, the edge filter is looking for a change from black to white, in other words, an edge. And again, we need to tell it what search area to search over. So in this case, I'm just going to type in 2 pixels. And immediately you can see that even with a very small blur value, that's already had a really nice smoothing effect on those stair steps at the edge. and if I put back the image, that may well be all that we need to do. If I increase the blur a little bit, you can see it is now softening, but in fact it's now actually bringing the matte back into the image, and that's not really what I want to do. Now remember that in Baselight, when we're applying, when we're doing composites like this for a key that we made in Baselight, it's not necessarily intended to be the final composite. It might be, but in many cases the final matte, the final key may be done in a separate VFX workstation and then imported into Baselight as an external matte. But if you are doing it inside Baselight, then obviously you do have the matte tool to get you the best results you can. And if I zoom back out again, you'll see that that actually looks pretty good. Okay, let's move on to the final shot here, the last example I'm going to show you. And what we've got here is a faded emblem. And rather than use a key in this case, I've actually drawn a shape. And if I just unbypass that layer, you can see I've drawn a shape over the areas of the red colour that I wanted to grade, just to make them look nicer. Again, we can view the matte by pressing O on the keyboard. And if we overlay the matte again using the invert matte overlay mode, you can see it lines up pretty well, but it's a little bit too big. I actually wanted it smaller so it would fit just inside the red areas. And obviously I could go in and adjust the shape, but that would take a little while. However, the shape itself does have feathering tools, so we could try feathering the shape to soften it off. However, feathering won't work in this case because feathering only goes outwards. So we could use the custom inner outer curves, which allows us to feather both inwards and outwards. So in this case we could try reducing the inner feathering, but because it's just scaling the inside, obviously it's coming in more at the sides than the top because it's a long thin shape. So again, that's not really going to get us the results that we want. So rather than do that, I'm actually not going to try feathering the shape at all, but I'm going to apply the matte tool. So again, with the shape selected this time, I can enable the matte tool, and again, let's use the in-out blur to bring that in a bit, and that's done a pretty good job, although it is blurring it off a little bit. It is now quite soft. So I might want to add a matte curve in order to, we'll use an S curve just to adjust the hardness of the edge there. There we go. So that's one way to do it. But if you look at the original image, these corners are actually a little bit curved, and the shape had sharp corners when I drew it. So to try and smooth off those sharp corners, I'm going to use another type of filter. So if I just disable these for now, and again, so these sharp corners here, I want to try and round them off. The final stage that we haven't looked at yet is the median stage. Now the median filter is actually an averaging filter, and it can be quite good at reducing noise. So if there is noise in your key, the median filter may be one way to try and reduce the noise. Although in the session on keys, we'll show you how you can actually pre-grade the input to a key to remove noise before the keyer actually does its job. So that's maybe another way to try and reduce noise in a key. But the median filter can be used for that. But in this case, I'm actually going to use it because it's averaging. It'll actually average and round off the corners here. So if I increase the radius, you'll see that it has the effect of, without reducing the size of the shape, it's actually rounding off the corners. So if I now go back to our grade layer, you can see that's now fitting in perfectly in the shot. Okay, well, nobody put any comments in the chat, so that's it for today, and I will see you next time. Bye.